afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for coming to my modest little address this afternoon entitled "Learning to Love the Law." My name is Stephen Hall. I'm a professor here in the Faculty of Law at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I'm going to resist the normal temptation that professors usually succumb to talk at length about myself. If you want to find something more about me, other than the fact that I'm a professor here in the Chinese U Law School, I suggest you go and visit my personal bio page at the CUHK Law website, and you can find out more about me there. So the title of today's address is Learning the Law, but it's really entitled Learning to Love the Law. This is not a place to come to if you are looking for some practical tips, some study tips on how to make notes of your lectures or cases, or how to set up a study group. This is more of a view from 30,000 feet on the project of legal studies that you have embarked upon, or perhaps have already completed over several years, or perhaps several decades of your life, because even when we enter practice, we never really stop studying the law. My intention over the next hour and a half or so is to introduce you to a tradition that is more than 2,500 years old. It's the oldest Western tradition of looking at and understanding the law. The Romans call this tradition, the Romans being the great jurists of the ancient world and the progenitors of all modern law, the Romans call this tradition of law the jus naturale. But don't worry, I'm not going to make this excessively academic. There will be unavoidably some academics in it, but it will be mostly my personal view, my take on this ancient tradition. Hopefully you will be able to see, as I lay it out step by step, how this oldest of all traditions has helped me to look at the law in a completely new way, and in a way that makes you want to embrace it, to love it. A good lawyer, a good law student, is someone who has made the law his acquaintance. A great lawyer, a great law student, is someone who has made the law his friend. An acquaintance is someone in respect of whom you may know some basic information, but there is no real relationship between acquaintances. You might greet your doorman. I assume you are acquainted with your doorman if you live like most Hong Kong people do in a multi-story building. You might be acquainted with your doorman. You might greet the doorman by name, perhaps, in the morning and in the evening, and perhaps give him a red packet at Chinese New Year. I hope you do. Beyond that, you probably don't know anything about him. Where was he born? And where did he go to school? Are his parents still alive? Is he married? Does he have children? If so, how many and how old? What are his hopes and fears? A friend is someone about whom you will know quite a lot, including the answers to all these questions and probably many others as well. In particular, you will care about and have concern for their development and well-being. If your doorman acquaintance takes up smoking, you will probably regard it as his business and not try to intervene. But if your friend takes up smoking, you will probably take steps to persuade him to change his ways because you know him well and you care about his welfare. If you want to be an adequate lawyer or an adequate law student, making the law your acquaintance is probably good enough. But if you want to be a great lawyer or a great law student, you will need to make the law your friend. You will need to know its character, including its origins and purposes, just like your real human friends. You will need to care about its future development and its ability to serve the requirements of justice. You must become intimate with the law. In other words, you must learn to love the law. Today, among the things we are going to discuss are friendship and human purpose. This might seem a strange subject for consideration in law school, yet, as I hope you will see by the end of our gathering, the ideas and facts of friendship and human purpose are central to understanding law's purpose and character. Once we understand this purpose and character, the door is opened to our learning to love the law, and especially the common law, and making it our friend. My goal today is to have you understand the essence of human purpose and friendship, understand their connection to the purpose of law, and reveal the character of the common law as a brilliant cultural artifact of human friendship. In this way, we can see why it is both possible and desirable to love the law, especially the common law, and hunger to know as much as we can about our new best friend, to be keen, hungry, eager to learn more about it, just as we are keen to learn more about our real friends, our human friends. So by the end of today's seminar, our session today, you should understand why the law already is your friend and why you should return that friendship to the law, especially the common law. So here is the roadmap. This is where we're going over the course of this session. I've broken it up into 3 parts. So my address will consist today of 3 parts. Now, part 1 is human purpose. Part 2 is the purpose of the law, and part 3 discusses the character of the common law. The first part is the largest part. It'll probably be about half of the session. This will be the part that will surprise you the most, I'm pretty sure. You probably didn't think when you came to law school that any professor would be speaking to you about human purpose, or if you prefer, the purpose of life or the meaning of life. When was the last time a law professor did that? We need to deal with the purpose of human life first. We need to deal with this first, because this oldest theory of law that I'm going to take you to a little bit later is embedded within and is part of a wider theory of the meaning and purpose of human life. This is an aspect of the ancient tradition that sets it apart from every other legal theory to which you might be or might have been exposed at law school. Most legal theories are theories of the law, and they're pretty dry and abstract. At most, they might connect that theory to some discrete, separate aspect of human life, such as the law in economics, the law in politics, the law in society, the law in the family, and so on. That's the most that will generally happen. Because this oldest vision is first and foremost a theory of life, deeply embedded within it is this vision or theory of law. That's what this oldest theory is. After we've identified the purpose of human life, we turn our attention. So first of all, we need to consider the purpose of human life in order to understand what's coming later, because without that, we won't be able to understand this oldest Western tradition, this oldest way of looking at law. After we've identified the purpose of human life, we turn our attention to the second part, the purpose of law. And we will see that the purpose of law is there to serve the purpose of human life, to make it easier for us to achieve our purpose, and everyone has a purpose, as we'll see. We all have, this may be surprising, every human being who lives, who has ever lived, and ever will live in the future has the same purpose. Just one purpose. But we all achieve that purpose in different ways because we all have different characters. So each one of us moves towards the same purpose, but in a unique way. Just as we all have 10 fingers, but we all have unique fingerprints on the end of them. The character of the person depends how well suited he is to the achievement of his human purpose. So too, the character of a legal system determines how well suited it is to the achievement of law's purpose, which is, as we will see, to help us achieve our purpose. In the third part, my case will be, so the first part and the second part, I'm not actually building a case. I'm just laying out before you some, perhaps almost certainly, unfamiliar aspects of this oldest of all Western traditions. In the third part, I've got a case to make. In the third part, my case will be that the common law's character is the one that is best, not uniquely, but best suited to the achievement of law's purpose, which is to assist us to achieve our purpose. So, part one, human purpose. According to Aristotle and the many influential Greeks and Romans who followed him, I told you this was an old theory that goes back more than 2,500 years. According to Aristotle and the many influential Greek and Romans who followed him, everything that exists has an end, a purpose, a telos. There's the Greek word. The Greek word is telos on the right of the screen. In ancient Greek script, the Greek word telos. According to Aristotle, everything has a telos. Now, we can tell whether and to what extent something is good by how well it fulfills its purpose, its telos. Everything has a purpose. The Greeks called it the telos. Everything has a purpose, and its purpose gives it its meaning. It is the end, the goal, the point of the whole thing. The purpose of a house is to provide us with shelter, warmth, and comfort. And a house is good to the extent that it fulfills that purpose. The purpose of food is to provide nourishment. And we say it is good food to the extent that it fulfills that purpose, and so on. We could do this all afternoon. Everything also has a nature. The Greeks call this its physis. We get words like physical and physics from this Greek word physis. There you can see it on the left of your screen in ancient Greek characters and Romanized. The Romans, when they translated this foreign Greek word into their own Latin, their native Latin, they translated this as natura. So everything has its own nature, its own natura. Interestingly, the word natura has the same root as another Latin word, nativitas or natuitas, which means birth. So the idea is that if it's part of your natura, part of your nature, it's something you're born with. It's something that's intrinsic to you. And this gets translated as nature in English. We can tell whether and to what extent something is good. Everything also has its own unchanging nature, its physis, which is to achieve its telos. So everything by its nature is orientated towards the achievement of its purpose, of its telos. Everything is orientated by its very nature to the attainment of its telos or purpose. So, for example, there's the Aesop. Aesop is one of these ancient Greek fabulists who tells the story. Well, at least this story is often attributed to Aesop, the story of the scorpion and the frog. Another story is, many of you have already heard of it, but for those of you who are unfamiliar, I'll quickly recap because it illustrates how the Greeks thought about this notion that everything, not just animals, but even inanimate objects, everything has its own nature, and its nature is to be orientated towards the achievement of its purpose or its meaning. The story says that there's on the riverbank, there's a scorpion and a frog. The scorpion wants to get to the other side of the riverbank. The scorpion obviously can't swim, so he asks the frog for a lift on the frog's back to swim across the other side of the riverbank. The frog protests, saying, "But if I do that, you'll just sting me and we'll both drown." The scorpion promises not to do that. Why would I do that? Why would I do something that causes us both to drown? So the frog agrees and gives the scorpion a lift across the river. Halfway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog, and as they're both sinking into the water, the frog asks, "Why did you do that? You said you wouldn't do it." And the scorpion replies, "That's my nature. I'm a scorpion. I sting things and then consume them. That is my nature. That's what I do. And all of my actions and all of my decisions are orientated towards the achievement of my end, my purpose. That's what my nature is." All right. So, in the 2nd century AD, right? So we've looked at telos, and we've looked at purpose, and we've looked at nature. In the 2nd century AD, Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, these two guys, both taught or maintained, and this is a quote from both of them, man should live according to his nature. Now, they're writing in Greek because even though they're Romans, whenever you wrote in about philosophy, the Romans would write in Greek because Greek was the language of philosophy, just as English is the language of the common law. Greek was, in the classical world, the language of philosophy. So man should live according to his nature, according to his phusis. When we first read this, man should live according to his nature, it's a bit of a mystery. What can that mean? It remains a mystery until we realize that they are coming out of a much older tradition. Even by the 2nd century AD, this was a very old tradition. What they meant was our nature is to achieve our purpose, and we should choose to live our lives consistently with an intention to achieve the purpose that we have as human beings. That's what is meant when they say man should live according to his nature. Just very briefly, Marcus Aurelius was one of the Roman emperors. He was the last of what's called the 5 good emperors. These 5 emperors reigned from about 96 AD to about 180 AD. And Marcus Aurelius was the last of these 5 good emperors. Many people regard Marcus Aurelius as the greatest emperor who ever lived. Marcus Aurelius had several teachers of philosophy, and the teacher of one of those teachers was Epictetus, who lived like 2 generations or 1.5 generations earlier than Marcus Aurelius. And Epictetus was a slave. So we go basically from slave to emperor, but it's basically the same philosophy. This is the same philosophy that was highly influential among the Roman elites for almost 1,000 years and among the Greeks before them. All right, so our human nature is to achieve our purpose, and according to people like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, we should choose to lead our lives in order to achieve that purpose. Okay, fine. But what is that purpose? We've already identified the purpose of other things like a house and food and so forth. What is human purpose? That's obviously a very big question. According to Aristotle, now Aristotle, he's the boss. This ancient tradition, he is the boss. According to Aristotle and his many followers, the purpose or telos of human life is eudaimonia. Here's the quote here. Happiness is the meaning and purpose of the whole, is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. This is one of the most famous quotes from Aristotle. It's from one of his most famous works, the Nicomachean Ethics. It's very often quoted. So according to this very famous quote, of course, he's writing in Greek and it's a translation. According to this very famous quote, this is usually true. So he says happiness is the purpose of human life. But he uses a Greek word. The Greek word is eudaimonia. This is usually translated in English as happiness. so that we are told in English translations, almost all English translations of Aristotle, and of his followers, that man's purpose or telos, his end point, his highest good, is happiness. That sounds too trite. It sounds too simple. How can simply happiness be our ultimate purpose or meaning of life? But happiness is a very inadequate translation of the Greek word eudaimonia. Literally, there's on the screen. There is the at the top of the screen. You see eudaimonia written in the ancient Greek text, the text that the writing, the characters that Aristotle himself would have used. Eudaimonia literally means good-spiritedness. If you put the Greek prefix eu in front of a word, it means good. Euthanasia means good death. Euphemism means good speech. Eucalyptus means good cover. So it's like a tree that gives you good cover from the sun. It's called a eucalypt, good cover. Maybe Europe also has the same origin, although the origins of the word Europe are a little bit obscure, but there's a very good chance that originally it meant good something to the ancient Greeks, Europe. Daimon, eudaimonia. Daimon means spirit. It's the root of our English word demon. To us, it means like an evil spirit, but to the Greeks, a daimon was just any spirit, right? So eudaimon means good spirit, and eudaimonia means good-spiritedness. So we've advanced a little bit to understanding what is the goal, the purpose, the end, the meaning of human life. Literally, good-spiritedness. But what eudaimonia meant to the Greeks and Romans was much more than happiness or good-spiritedness. It means thriving, living a complete life, or more accurately, achieving all of one's potentials, being all that one can be. The Romans rendered the idea in Latin in several ways when they were translating from this foreign Greek language into their own native Latin. They would translate eudaimonia in different ways. One of the most popular ways that they translated it was with the Latin word florens, which literally means flourishing. This is the root of the English word flower. Florens, we get flower from this. So the idea is that it's like the bud that opens up and becomes everything that it can be, like a flower opening up. In English, the best translation of human flourishing, therefore, of eudaimonia, therefore, is human flourishing. Florens, flourishing, achieving all your potentials, becoming everything that you can be. The purpose of human life, then, is human flourishing, according to this ancient tradition, being all that we can be, realizing all our potentials by marshalling our talents, inclinations, and resources in order to live the most complete life we can build for ourselves in the brief, very brief time available to us. Some of these people, Seneca in the 1st century AD, for example, wrote a book called On the Shortness of Life, where he was sort of giving advice on how to achieve your full human potential in the very brief time that nature has given us. It is the achievement, in other words, to borrow a phrase from another important Western text, it's the achievement of what might be called life in abundance. So the purpose or telos of life, our human purpose, is the achievement of our full human flourishing, our eudaimonia, and our nature is orientated towards the achievement of that purpose of eudaimonia in the limited time available to us. Just as an aside at this point, I just sort of found this out myself, or I just realized it in the last couple of weeks. I didn't realize this before. I should have been aware of this a long time ago, but I never stopped to think about it. Aristotle's name derives from 2 Greek words, Aristos and telos. We anglicize it as Aristotle, right? But it literally means, Aristos means best, and telos means purpose. So Aristotle's name literally means the best purpose. That's his name. All right, so this brings us, remember I mentioned friendship at the outset. Don't worry, all of these threads are going to be tied together very soon. But these are the threads. We're going to see how they tie together. Then we're going to see how they connect to the law. And we'll see how all of this fits together in this most ancient of all Western traditions of looking at the law. This brings us back to friendship. As I said at the outset, one cannot be a great lawyer or a great law student unless one has grown to love the law, unless one has truly made the law one of our closest friends. For Aristotle and countless others in this ancient Western tradition, the central meaning of friendship is philia. There it is in the ancient Greek text on the top right of your screen, which means not only, and for those of you who don't know how to read Chinese, the Chinese character is on the opposite side of the screen. Some of you might not know what that character on the opposite side of the screen means. For Aristotle and countless others in this ancient Western tradition, the central meaning of friendship is philia, which means not only friendship, it also means, because a lot of these Greek words, they're kind of rich with meaning. It also means the love, care, or concern, love, care, and concern that friends have for each other. We get words like philosophy, philia sophia, love of or friendship of wisdom. Sophia is the Greek word for wisdom. It's also a popular girl's name. Anglophile, philia, the love of things English. Sinophile, the love of things Chinese. Philosemite, a person who loves or likes the Jews. Right? We get all these words. Philonomos is the Greek word for the love of the law. Nomos is the word for law. Philonomos is the love of the law. Philomena, a once popular girl's name, literally means strong love. Right. But philia is not this love, this friendship is not an emotion or a feeling. Rather, philia, this friendship or love that the Greeks spoke of, is precisely a steady wish or determination that a person, including yourself, because you can love yourself and you can quite properly love yourself as well as love other people, is precisely a steady wish or determination that a person should achieve his eudaimonia, his full human flourishing, his highest good. We can love our family and friends even while we feel emotions of frustration or even anger towards them. Rather, as C.S. Lewis, now C.S. Lewis, he was a kind of a very, very famous man of letters and an academic in the middle of the 20th century. He was a big name at that time. He's also the author of many popular books, including, remember, there was the Narnia series and the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. These are all C.S. Lewis's works, and he was a friend of people of a circle called the Inklings in Oxford, which included J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings. He was part of that whole literary circle. According to C.S. Lewis, in a book called The Problem of Pain, he's discussing this question of love, this Greek idea of philia. This is the way C.S. Lewis very skillfully put the idea. Love, that is philia, is not affectionate feeling. It's not actually the feeling, but a steady wish for the loved person's, that could include yourself or someone else, the loved person's ultimate good, that is their eudaimonia, or their full human flourishing, as far as it can be attained. Just a moment. Yes, as far as it can be obtained. This is the friendship or love that parents have for their children and that married couples have for each other. A parent has the steady wish and determination. Remember, that's what Lewis says it is. The steady wish and determination that his child should achieve his eudaimonia, his full human flourishing. This is precisely what your parents want for you and what you want or will want for your children, should you have any. This is true even if your parents never heard of Aristotle or the Greek word eudaimonia or any other Greek word, because he was describing something universal in the human condition, not dependent on time, place, culture, or circumstance. It is part of our natura, our physis, our nature. We are born this way. It is inherent to us. In a good marriage, it is also what you will want for your wife or husband. Indeed, the purpose of marriage, the achievement of which, remember, we say something is good to the extent it achieves or fulfills its purpose. The purpose of marriage, the achievement of which allows us to describe it as a good marriage, is that each partner helps the other and in the process helps himself achieve their full human flourishing. Actually, we know this is true. We just don't put it into words. Aristotle and the others, working in the same tradition, are just putting into words what we already know. Aristotle's teacher was Plato, and Plato's teacher was Socrates. Socrates didn't teach anything. He just asked you questions. There are many important things relating to our own physis, our nature. There are many important things relating to our own human nature that we already know simply by experience, reflection, and self-examination. Socrates simply drew these things out of his listeners by asking questions, by asking them to say what they already knew, but had perhaps not yet put into words for themselves. This is the Socratic method, actually, which is so often and consistently misunderstood and misapplied in law schools. Now, I just want you to remain patient at this point. We're still talking about the meaning of life. I promise you, we are circling back. When we finish this 30,000-foot view of this ancient wisdom of human life, we'll circle back and we'll see the connection to the purpose of law. And then you'll see why it is not only possible, but desirable to actually make the law your friend and love it. This steady wish and determination for full human flourishing is the essence of the highest form of friendship, of philia. But that essence can take different forms, which are determined by how much a person is prepared to sacrifice for the other person's full human flourishing, or indeed for his own. How much is he prepared to sacrifice for his own human flourishing? The same point can be made. The highest manifestation of philia is usually to be found in parenthood or marriage. So strong is the wish. You know this just by reflection. So strong is the wish or determination of your parents that you achieve your full human flourishing, that in an extreme situation, and if there is no other option, they might be prepared to sacrifice their lives for you. They are certainly prepared to sacrifice very large amounts of their time and wealth for you so that you may achieve your full human flourishing. Why do they do that? They have wanted that for you from the moment you were born, and probably even before you were born. And that will be transmitted in your turn to your own children, should you have any. The same could be said of couples who are in a good marriage with each other. Exactly the same can be said. This highest form of philia might more rarely also exist. It's rare, but it can also happen among friends who are not united by parenthood or marriage. Indeed, there's a passage from the Bible. It's from John's Gospel. And remember, the Gospels are written in Greek. So here is the English translation of the relevant passage. It's talking about philia because this thing is written in Greek. Greater love, and the Greek word is philia in the original, greater philia has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. That's in the Bible. But this friendship does not need to involve a willingness to die. The essence of philia always remains the same, a wish or determination that a person achieve his full human flourishing. But what a person is prepared to sacrifice in order to see the wish fulfilled can vary and need not involve a willingness to make major sacrifices. When you ask your school teacher or university professor to write you a reference, he may spend 30 minutes doing so, maybe 20 or 30 minutes doing so, depending on how much there is to say. On the surface, there is nothing in it for him, but he sacrifices his time that can never be recovered, and that moves him 30 minutes closer to the end of his life, to his death, so that you can, in some respect, move closer to your full human flourishing. But do not ask him, don't ask that teacher or professor to sacrifice his life or a much more substantial portion of his time or of his wealth unless you are prepared to court disappointment. I say there is nothing in it for the teacher or professor on the surface, but there is, in fact, something in it for him. By helping you achieve your human flourishing, he is simultaneously moving closer to his own. The two are connected. Similarly, when your parents or husband or wife make a perhaps much larger sacrifice for your human flourishing, for your eudaimonia, they are simultaneously moving closer to their own. When you sacrifice for your family, for your own family or friends, you are moving closer to your human flourishing. Such is the nature of true friendship. Such is the nature of philia. Friendship is not philia, is not only helpful for human flourishing. No, it's more than that. It's essential. You cannot achieve your human flourishing without it. You cannot do it. As Aristotle, is another quote from Aristotle. I told you Aristotle is the boss, right? As Aristotle famously observed, and everyone knows this quote from Aristotle. I think everyone on the planet at some point has heard at least this Aristotle quote, right? Man is a political animal. That's in his book, The Politics, right? Man is a political animal. Because he's writing in Greek, and that's an English translation. And again, once again, not a terribly good, in my view, not a terribly good translation. It's the standard translation, but not, I think, a terribly good one. By this, he meant not party politics, not the Communist Party or the Liberal Party or the Fascist Party or something. But he means this, that we human beings, we are social creatures. We need each other. We need each other in order to achieve our full human flourishing. So we're more like dogs than cats. Cats don't need other cats, but dogs need other dogs, or at least they need all the company of human beings. Otherwise, they get sick and die. Cats don't need other cats. So we're more like, in this sense, we're more like dogs and cats. We are social creatures. We need to be around others. We need to interact with others to be healthy and fit and free and well and to achieve our full flourishing. If Beethoven had been stranded by himself on a desert island, he would not have been able to achieve the flourishing that he did. Of course, he wouldn't have had an audience. And we would have been deprived of the flourishing that exposure to his music now provides us. A doctor needs his patients in order to flourish as much as his patients need him, perhaps more so. A professor needs his students as much as his students need him. Philia, friendship, is a two-way street, even if the sacrifice appears to, on the surface, to be one-sided. This is why your parents and other philia type friends are happy to sacrifice for you and you for them. Now, I've spoken about a lot about eudaimonia, of full human flourishing, but it still sounds a bit vague, just achieving all your potentials. It sounds still a little bit foggy. Now, there's one thing that Aristotle wasn't. He wasn't foggy. He defined everything down to the almost to the atomic level, right? So I've spoken a lot about eudaimonia, of human flourishing, as the purpose of a human person's life. I've mentioned that we move closer to eudaimonia by being all that we can be, realizing all our potentials, by marshalling our talents, inclinations, and resources in order to live the most complete life we can build for ourselves in the short time available. Because we are social creatures, political animals in the usual translation, we can do this only in friendship, in philia, with others, and they with us. And it is our unchanging human nature, our phusis, to be orientated towards our ultimate purpose of our telos, of eudaimonia, of our life in abundance. That is, our nature is to be orientated in that direction. But can we be more specific about this? In particular, how can we be all that we can be? How do we achieve life in abundance according to this ancient tradition that goes back more than 2.5 years? Well, you'll be happy to learn, I think you'll be happy to learn, that we can be more specific. We do this, we achieve our eudaimonia, by participating in all the basic human goods. There's a list of them on the screen there. There are seven goods there. These goods are not instrumental. This list on the screen is compiled by Professor John Finnis. He's a professor of jurisprudence at the University of Oxford. But Professor Finnis, he's also an Australian, by the way, but that's not the reason I like his work. I like his work because of what he says, not because of his nationality. This list was compiled by John Finnis, but he would not claim to be innovating. He is simply drawing together 2,500 years of tradition and saying that one way or another, these are the basic human goods that have been recognized at different times in different places by those concerned with identifying the requirements of full human flourishing of eudaimonia. This list is basic because they are not means to ends. They are primary goods, not secondary goods. They are not means to ends. They are not instrumental. They are the ends. They are the ends, the purpose of human life. They are not secondary goods by which we achieve our goals, like money. Money is a good thing, but it's not the ultimate end. We know that. We know that. We learned that when we were children. There's more to life than money. How many times have you been told that? They are not secondary goods by which we achieve our goals, like money, a job, a house, a car, food, clothing, etc. That's why we call it. That's why it's like the sale of goods ordinance, right? We call them goods because they are actually good because they help us achieve a higher good. That's why we use that word. The basic human goods are the goals, and you can't actually trade in these basic goods. You can only trade in secondary goods. The basic human goods are the goals, which, when participated in, gradually ripen over time, like a ripe piece of fruit, into full human flourishing. They are not things we use in our life to obtain other things. They are the things that make life worth living. They are the things that bring us joy, which is probably a better translation than happiness. Joy is a much stronger word. It comes closer in English. to eudaimonia. But even then, it's not complete. They are the things that give our life meaning. They are the things that life is for. As I said before, you probably didn't expect a kind of disquisition on the meaning of life at law school, but it's necessary, as I said before, to finish exploring this ancient territory. And we're very close to finishing it now before we finally turn our attention to the theory of law that's embedded inside all of this. We could easily spend a whole day, perhaps a whole week, discussing these basic goods and what makes them basic. In fact, there are enough of these on the list. There's one for every day. We could do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so forth, but we won't do that. But we've got other fish to fry this afternoon, and I'd like to spend a whole day or a whole week discussing these, but we don't have time. So for now, let's just quickly list these basic human goods, which Professor Finnis and many others, not just Professor Finnis, many others going back 2,500 years, one way or another, are basically saying the same thing as this. Let's have a look at this. For now, let's just take it from me that these are the basic goods. They cannot be ranked or compared with each other. They are not even really separate things. They are just different aspects of the same thing, of eudaimonia, of full human flourishing. It's like a diamond. When you twist the diamond around, it looks different. But that's only because you are looking at it now from a different angle. But you are not really seeing something different. It's a different aspect or facet of the same thing you were looking at before, now viewed from a different angle. So let's just quickly, let's do not the one-day version of each of these things, but the 30-second version of each of these things. Bear in mind that these underlined words are just headlines. And lying behind these headlines are sometimes quite complex sets and extensive sets of ideas. But we'll just do the very, very quick synopsis. Synopsis, there's another Greek word. We'll just do the very quick synopsis of these basic goods. Life, and you say, of course, life, that's obvious, but that includes lots of other things, not just being biologically alive, as we'll see. Being biologically alive doesn't cut it, right? There's other things like your health, your vigor, your feeling fit and free and good, including also the next progeneration. That's included in the idea of life, producing the next generation of human beings. You can participate in the basic good of human life by doing all of those things and many other things, right? You don't have to participate in all of them. Like you might have no children, or you might be unwell. You might be unwell for the whole of your life, but you can still participate in the good of life in other ways, right? There are lots of different ways in which you can participate in all of these sort of headline basic human goods. Knowledge, well, you are participating in this human good by coming here today. Presumably, you could see some point to it. Actually, among the first things we say, the first words we use when we start to speak is why. Your children, when you were children, you've probably forgotten, but if you've got children, they're always asking why, or how, right? This is like from the earliest age, from the moment they can start to articulate any ideas, they are like little sponges soaking up knowledge. It's a basic human good, and they are having an enormously wonderful time participating at this very young age when they actually don't know anything, in absorbing lots and lots of knowledge. Play, you think, well, that's so trivial, play. But imagine life without any play, without any games in it, without any ability to go swimming or play tennis or a video game. We go to work so we can play tennis with our friends on Saturday afternoon, not the other way round. It's what we put. It is why we put on our suit and go to work and endure all the petty humiliations I guarantee you will suffer in a law office over the next few decades. This is why we do it, not the other way around. Play is one of the basic human goods. It's difficult to imagine a life with no play in it. 4, aesthetic experience. Things like enjoying music, or creating music, art, or creating art, enjoying nature, enjoying a sunset. You can't put a price on these things. This is what life is for. This is why we go to work and earn money. This is why. Sociability, friendship, philia, mutual aid. Imagine a life. Just take 5 seconds to imagine a life if you have no friends. The thought is horrifying. It's a basic human good. It's not a means to something else. It is the end. It is the purpose of being alive, of life. Religion, meaning not just established institutionalized religions, though it can certainly mean that. I don't mean to suggest that for a moment. It can certainly include established organized religions, but more broadly, it includes anything that involves like the quest to understand the meaning or purpose of our life and knowing why you think it has that meaning. We all do that, even if we're an atheist. We basically have the religious impulse as part of our nature, and we come up with an explanation for the universe, which is, even if there is no God in it, it is essentially a religious explanation. It's an explanation that tries to give meaning to our life and to the universe in some way. And we all do that. We've all done that ever since human beings emerged on the planet. And finally, practical reason, meaning our ability to discern right from wrong and act upon that discernment in freedom. I'll say more about that seventh one soon, because we'll see that this seventh basic human good, practical reason, is closely connected to the law, and it provides us with a segue into our examination of the purpose of law. So these things are the things, this list of 7 things here, are the things that make life worth living, that give us something to live for, and, if necessary, to die for. People have willingly died for these things because somewhere, deep within themselves, they know that without these things, life would not be worth living. And we know this is true. Imagine, like the most extreme case, let's imagine that you weren't participating in any of these basic human goods. That's almost impossible to imagine a life where that's happening, but just imagine a life where that's happening. You would probably want to die. That's probably what you would want to do. You'd want to die. And people who imagine that they are not participating in the basic human goods are among those, and it is not the only explanation for it, are among those who commit suicide. As the Romans and Greeks said, it is better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. Now, I want to turn our attention back to the 7th good, basic human good, because I didn't say much about it before, but as I said before, this is closely connected to the law and provides us with a segue into the purpose of law and its connection to human life. Now, I want to say something about the 7th basic good, practical reason, because this is our strongest link to the law. All right, so you can see on the screen there a picture taken of a huntsman and a lion. All right, now, before concluding this brief survey of the purpose of human life, I need to say a few things about the last item on the list of basic human goods. Practical reason is what steers us into the ways we participate in our full human flourishing. It's like the bridge of the ship where the steering wheel is located. This is the faculty and basic human good that directs us to all the other basic goods in freedom. This is what gives us our freedom as human beings. It is also what makes us uniquely human and is the source of our freedom and human dignity. It is also, in this ancient tradition, what gives us our natural or human rights, although that's obviously a topic for another day. we need to say a few things about reason because reason and law are very closely connected. There are two types of reason, theoretical and practical. This may be the first time you've been introduced to this idea, but this is really important distinction to understand this distinction between the two types of reason that exist, theoretical and practical. The purpose of theoretical reason is to provide descriptive or empirical explanations of the past or present or predictions of the future. Animals can share this form of reasoning with us. Am I close enough to make a kill? Well, the lion will be asking itself when it looks at the huntsman. It involves a prediction or calculation of what is possible to occur. Animals and artificial intelligence, like the computer I'm speaking into right now, can think only inside the box of theoretical reason. The better computers are better at theoretical reason, the stronger computers, but it's still, they can only operate inside that theoretical reason box. On this planet, practical reason is unique to humans. As we shall see later, it's no accident that only humans make laws. Practical reason is not simply thought. This variety of reason is practical because it concerns our practice or conduct as free persons in choosing right from wrong. The Greek word is praxis. That's where we get practical from. It is concerned with identifying things that are right or wrong and not merely things that are possible or impossible. More specifically, practical reason concerns the legal jargon as the normativity that makes our practice right or good or just. If it's good practice, remember, you put EU in front of it, the Greek word for this is eupraxis, right? Not just practice. Praxis could be neutral either way. It's conduct directed to right or wrong, but it could be in either direction. Eupraxis is practice directed to something that's good or right or just. Would it be right for me to kill that lion? Among the Earth's creatures, practical reason is uniquely and quintessentially human. Theoretical reason tells us what we can do. Practical reasons tells us what we should do. Theoretical reason tells us what, whether, and how we can send a spaceship to Mars. Practical reason tells us why we should or should not make the journey. A sufficiently clever animal or computer could ask and answer the first question, can we go to Mars? But only a human can ask and answer the second question, should we try? What would be the point? When the lion and the human are looking at each other, they each ask themselves, am I close enough or too close to make or escape a kill? But only the human asks, would it be right for me to kill the lion? The lion never asks that question. Practical reason is the only natural bright line distinguishing us from all other creatures on Earth. Practical reason is the faculty, basic human good, and cardinal virtue of wisdom or discernment. The Greek word is Sophia. Remember, philia, Sophia, love of wisdom, which is also a girl's name. The Latin word is prudentia, where we get the word prudence, jurisprudence, wisdom about the law. Its purpose, that's practical reason's purpose, is to enable us freely and intelligently to identify the ways and means of drawing closer to a state of full human flourishing, which is our purpose, our nature. Practical reason does this by identifying the basic human goods and the choices, decisions, or actions required for an effective participation in all those goods. Practical reason thus helps us discern what we need to do and avoid in order to move closer to our full human flourishing. It is the term philosophers use to denote that which religions often referred to as our conscience. So it's the philosophical term, practical reason, is what philosophers, the word philosophers use in religious traditions, the equivalent expression describing essentially the same thing, but with a different language, is conscience. Lions don't have a conscience because they don't have practical reason. Because only we have practical reason, only we think in terms of should and ought. The lion never thinks, should I kill the hunter? It only thinks, can I kill the hunter? And only we have the freedom to choose and act in ways that move us closer to or further away from our purpose of full human flourishing. The lion has no choice but to live according to its nature and do what lions do. We have a choice. Only we can turn our backs on human flourishing, on eudaimonia. We have the freedom to do that. We can turn our backs on our nature. We can reject eudaimonia and our nature. We have the freedom to do that. Why we have that freedom and who or what, if anything, conferred it on us is a whole other question outside the scope of today's address. For present purposes, it is enough to note that we undoubtedly have it. We can see it all around us and inside us all the time. Practical reason shows us how to move closer to our true nature or to move in the opposite direction. Only we, humans, can be saints or demons. There has never been a saintly pig or a demonic cow. Creatures endowed only with theoretical reason have no choice but to live according to their nature. We alone are free to live up to our nature, to live into our nature, or to reject it. This is what Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and others meant when they said man should live according to his nature. He should exercise his natural freedom of the natural freedom of his practical reason to embrace rather than reject his nature, his telos, his full human flourishing. He should choose to lean into his nature, to live up to his nature, to strive to achieve his full human flourishing. Right, that brings us to the end of part one. In summary then, the purpose of human life is our full human flourishing, our eudaimonia, which can be achieved only by our participation in the basic human goods, in the free exercise of our practical reason, because we are social creatures. We can do this only in a community of friendship, that is philia, with each other. That then brings us to the purpose of law. As we noted at the outset, the oldest of all theories of law is embedded deeply within a broader theory of the purpose of human life. We have now completed the 30,000-foot view of the meaning of or purpose of human life. It is at this point that the purpose of law swims into view. If all things have a purpose, then law must also have a purpose. Law is a product of human reason, practical reason. Only we make laws. We make laws about when it is permissible to kill lions. The lions have never made laws about when it is permissible to kill us, and they never will. They will kill us according to their nature. That is, if they are hungry and have the opportunity, or if we have threatened them. They are not free to reject their nature, and that is why we don't put them on trial when they kill human beings. We don't subject them to a criminal trial. Law is made by humans for humans because we are free. The purpose of law is to serve a human purpose. We now know what that human purpose is. It is our full human flourishing. It is our eudaimonia. The law's purpose is not, I'll tell you what it isn't. The law's purpose is not social control. You may have learned that somewhere else. That's not true. Nor is it the preservation of power or riches by a ruling party, a ruling class, or a ruling race. Rather, the purpose of law is to provide us with a framework within which we can achieve our purpose, our eudaimonia, our full human flourishing by participating in all the basic human goods in a community of friendship, of philia with each other. The law's purpose is thus to protect and improve that framework that assists us to achieve our purpose, our telos. This framework makes it possible for complete strangers to achieve their human flourishing in philia, a form of friendship, in cooperation with each other, or in competition with each other, that where both parties benefit without destroying each other. In 1266, right, so in 756 years ago, in 1266, Thomas Aquinas wrote his immensely influential treatise on law, which is certainly the most important work of legal theory, of jurisprudence of the entire Western Middle Ages. In the treatise, Aquinas gives us his famous three-part definition of law. According to Aquinas, now those of you who've attended any of my classes will see what I've done here. I've inserted the numbers for greater clarity. The numbers are not actually part of the quote. According to Aquinas, law is nothing but one, an ordinance of reason for the common good, two, by one who has care of the community, and three, promulgated. If you can tick all three boxes, it is a complete law. If you cannot tick all three boxes, it is at best, a defective law. It is not a law that commands the respect of our practical reason, or if you prefer, of our conscience. For now, let's just focus on the first box, the first of these requirements. Law is an ordinance of reason, quote, made for the common good, unquote. What a thing is made for is its purpose. A house is made to provide shelter and comfort. To the extent it does so, it is a good house. You are made for human flourishing. To the extent that you have achieved it, you have lived a good life. According to Aquinas, the law is made for the common good. To the extent it preserves or enhances the common good, it has fulfilled its purpose. It is a good law. To that extent, it is a good law, a law that commands our respect and compliance in practical reason, in conscience. If the law is not made for the common good, it is a bad or defective law that does not command our respect and compliance, the respect and compliance of our practical reason or our conscience. So what is this all-important common good? Now we're getting very close to the connection between human life and the law. Now, I've got here three quotes for you, one from Professor Finnis at Oxford, I mentioned before, one from Professor Jacques Maritain, who's a French philosophy professor from the middle of the 20th century, and one from Professor Michael Novak, who was both a kind of philosopher and an economist. So we have law, we have philosophy, and we have economics. But for reasons of time, I'm not going to walk you through these three quotes. They're all kind of interesting. What I've done, what I think I've done, is I've condensed their ideas and the ideas of other people who've written about the common good into 5 or 6 lines, which I think is even if I say so myself, a pretty good sort of condensation of all of these different ideas. And it's going to be published in something coming out soon. So self-quote, because professors love quoting themselves, and I'm afraid to say no exception. So this is self-quote. The common good is the whole of the stadium in which the game of life is played out. The stadium includes not only its physical infrastructure, but also its cultural and institutional infrastructure. It is a framework of friendship within which a community's members may draw closer to their full human flourishing. This framework extends to the laws and other institutions that in various ways support laws. Right. So if you think of life as a type of game that's played out, the common good is the whole stadium. It's everything that assists us to successfully play the game of life, including the rules of the game itself, which are the laws. The laws are part of the infrastructure, that whole mass of things that assist us to achieve for ourselves and in a community of friendship with others, our full human flourishing. In the natural law tradition, the jus naturale of the Romans, the common good is not the utilitarian's greatest good for the greatest number or some variation on that incoherent theme. This is the utilitarian fallacy of Jeremy Bentham in the early 19th century. If this were true, the common good could be served by enslaving 49% of the population to the other 51%. Of course, that's nonsense. That can't be right. Much less, an even more serious error is this, much less is it the good of the state. This is an even worse fallacy, that the law's purpose is to advance the interests of the state, as if the state had some self-referential purpose higher than and separate from the human flourishing of its citizens. Instead, the state is itself part of that infrastructure, whose purpose is to serve the citizens by facilitating their attainment for themselves of their human flourishing in freedom and friendship with their community. The state does not, in this ancient tradition, stand above its citizens and have a separate interest. In the Treatise of Law, that 1266 work I referred to you earlier, in the 13th century, Aquinas wrote this. The prince, and by this, he used the word prince to mean whoever is the ruler. Right? The prince is the vice-regent of the people. He is not your master. Even in the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas saying, he's your servant, and he is there to help you achieve your human purpose. That's his job. Can the law be misused to serve a purpose other than that for which it exists? Of course it can. The purpose of the computer I'm talking into now, and on which you are undoubtedly watching me, is to help us with our study or work. To the extent it does that, we say it's a good computer. Can I misuse it? I certainly can. I could pick it up and bludgeon you to death with it. But does the fact that I have misused it for a purpose other than that for which it exists mean that it no longer has a proper purpose? Of course not. It still has the same purpose it had before. That remains its proper purpose, the purpose for which it was made. The law can certainly be misused, and too often is misused, for a purpose other than that for which it exists. But that does not deprive the law of its proper purpose. According to Aquinas, a law can be made for the common good only if it is an ordinance of reason, just as the citizen can discern the choices and actions that are required for his purpose of human flourishing, so the lawmaker can discern the laws and official actions that are required to effect the law's purpose of preserving or improving the common good. The person and the citizen and the lawmaker are also free to use their practical reason to defeat the purpose. That's what freedom means. We are free to do the wrong thing. The animals aren't. Creatures with theoretical reason have no such freedom. Only humans have this type of reason. Just as I am free to defeat my purpose by developing an addiction to alcohol or other drugs, the lawmaker is free to defeat the law's purpose by using it not for the common good, but as a weapon to preserve the power or riches of a ruling party, a ruling class, or a ruling race, or to discriminate based on arbitrary, that is literally unreasonable, factors such as race, sex, religion, political views, and a few others. Such a misuse of the law for an improper purpose relieves us of our usual obligation in practical reason, or if you prefer conscience, to comply with the defective law. But it does not deprive the law of its proper purpose to preserve or improve the common good. The fact that I misuse a bread knife as a murder weapon does not deprive the knife of its proper purpose to carve bread. That brings us to the third and final part, the character of the common rule. Right? So this is the part where I make a case. So far, I've not been making a case. I've been simply laying out for you what has been said for 2,500 years in relation to this oldest tradition, the oldest way of looking and thinking about the law. So we reviewed the purpose of life, which is the attainment of eudaimonia, full human flourishing, and the purpose of law, which is to preserve or enhance the common good, which is the framework within which we achieve our human purpose. These are the threads connecting purpose, your purpose, to the law. How well adapted a person or institution is to the achievement of their purpose depends on what we might call character. You might have a weak character, which makes it harder for you to achieve your purpose of eudaimonia. On the other hand, you might have a very strong character, which will make it easier for you to achieve your human purpose. But everyone can achieve their human purpose, even those with a weak character. They just might have to work harder, or they might have to change their character. The same is true for legal systems. The purpose of a legal system is to serve the common good. We've established that now. That's its purpose. That's what it was made for. And the common good is the infrastructure which assists us to achieve our human purpose of eudaimonia. Some legal systems, because their character is different, are better adapted than others to achieve law's purpose. The purpose of the common law system is exactly the same as the purpose of a civil law system, of an Islamic law system, and even of the old Soviet communist legal system. But how and if the purpose is attained depends on the character of the system. So let's have a look at the character of the common law. And you might be relieved to learn at this point I've reduced my argument to my case to a series of dot points. I know we're now in the home stretch. So this is the part where I'm making the case to you that you should love the law, whichever legal system it is, but you should especially love the common law. It's got the best, for reasons I'll outline in a moment, it's got the best character to assist it to achieve the purpose of any legal system, which is to help us achieve our purpose. The same is true for legal systems, right? So, so let's have a look at the character of the common law. So here we are, the dot point. First and foremost, and I've underlined it at the top because this informs everything that comes underneath. Everything else flows from the point made at the top. First and foremost, the common law is an essentially customary system. Those of you who are my students in the CUHK Law School, you've heard me say this, even though you've only been in my classes for less than 3 weeks, you've already heard me say this like at least a dozen times. This is far and away the most important feature of the common law that distinguishes it from other legal traditions. Because it is decentralized, it resembles, or it can be compared to, a market economy. It contains the wisdom and input of countless millions of people, not just countless millions of people, countless millions of people over centuries, not just the ruler or rulers of the day. No one is in overall centralized control. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why tyrants hate the common law, because they cannot control it. It is like the internet, which tyrants also hate and fear because they cannot control it. Instead, the actions of millions of people are feeding into it. And what congeals in as a custom, tradition, or reasonable expectation of the community right across society, those things get recognized by the common law courts as legal rules and as modes by which the legal rules are applied to particular sets of facts. Consequently, the common law is almost completely immune from the greatest source of corruption in the law. The greatest source of corruption in the law is power. As the great British historian, English historian, Lord Acton famously remarked, he was active in the late 19th century, and most of his really good work was done in the 1880s and 1890s, at about the same time as Carlyle and Carbolic Smoke Ball Company. He says, and everyone knows this quote from Lord Acton, even if they don't know Lord Acton said it. He's the author of this very famous epigram. All power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Of all the sources of corruption, money, sex, fame, none is more potentially corrupting than power. We love bossing other people around. And once we have tasted this ability or opportunity, we hate giving it up. We would give up everything else in order to hold on to it, this wonderful, thrilling, but soul-destroying feeling one gets in bossing other people around, and they jump at your command. The common law is almost completely free of this sort of corruption because no one is in control of it. There is still some room for the corruption of power because sometimes you might get a judge who feels free to misuse his position simply to impose a personal preference on society as though he were a prince, a king. But there are many thousands of judges, and the damage inflicted by one judge can be limited. Indeed, that's not their numbers is not the only limitation on their powers. There are some other limitations on judges. To use a term from economics, the risk of misuse of power is greatly dispersed. It's a dispersal of risk in a decentralized system. The risk is not completely gone because there are still humans involved in the system, but the risk is massively reduced because, as I said before, no one is in overall centralized control. The common law's rules and principles and their modes of application to particular sets of facts are inductive rather than deductive. That means we infer them upwards from the facts, not downwards from some prescribed principle. We do not reason downwards from an imposed or prescribed body of deliberately designed rules, but upwards from the facts from which rules and principles are identified. We make the rules through our customs, recognized by the courts on a case-by-case basis, because we know best, in the free exercise of our practical reason, what is required for our full human flourishing, not some distant ruler who doesn't know us and probably doesn't even like us. That distant person certainly knows less well than we do what is necessary for our full human flourishing. Because the common law's rules are induced up from the customs of the people and other communities themselves, the common law is simultaneously democratic and conservative. It's democratic because it comes up from us, and it's conservative for the same reason. It doesn't seek to change us. It doesn't try to make us better people. It just reflects who we are. And that's another reason why tyrants hate the common law. It is thus comparable to a mirror. It just reflects back to us who we are. Very little in the common law should take you by surprise. When you wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, you should not be surprised by what you see. That's what the common law is. It's a reflection of ourselves. There's another way in which the mirror metaphor works, because you are not looking at yourself as you are now, but as you were in the recent past. There's a millisecond delay because the light has to bounce between the mirror and your eyes and your brain. This is not you now. This is you a millisecond ago. The common law is like that. It's always a little bit behind, sometimes more than a little bit, because it's always needing to catch up. That's why with some of these cases, when there is a hard set of facts, you see the courts reach out, the common law courts reach out, take hold of the doctrine and just tweak it to bring it back into line with the altered customs, traditions, and reasonable expectations of the community. As I mentioned, the common law seeks to reflect who we are and not to change us. This is in stark contrast to the old Soviet legal system that existed up till 1991. That system had an ideological theory underlying it. The stated goal of Soviet law was not eudaimonia, you perhaps won't be surprised to learn. The stated goal of Soviet law was put in place by Lenin and Stalin in the 1920s and 1930s was to produce, to use their own words. This is the words of the Soviet legal system itself. These are not my words. The goal was to produce the, quote, new Soviet man, unquote. It was to take human nature and create something new. It was a revolutionary legal system, proudly and expressly. Its stated purpose was not to reflect the Russian people as they were. Oh, no. Its stated purpose was to fundamentally change the Russian people into something different that aligned with the ideology of the Soviet regime. It failed, of course, because human nature cannot be changed. Our physis, our nature, is unchangeable. It is part of our nature, our naturitas, our birth. Aristotle could have told them that, although they probably would have locked him up or shot him if he tried. The common law changes, but only gradually and organically. Its change is not mechanical. It's not like an engine that's been designed like a civil law system by control central. If you want to change such a system, like the civil law system, the engineers must come in with their various tools and change the machinery. Rather, the common law changes organically over time and very gradually in a living relationship with its environment, like a coral reef or a rainforest, not like an engine, like a coral reef or a rainforest. Or it's like a glacier. If you're watching a glacier, it looks completely static. But if you come back 6 months later, you can see it's small, it's moved that much, a small distance. Something similar is true of coral reefs and rainforests, indeed. The common law is always changing every day, gradually, slowly, organically, and in reaction to its environment. Moreover, because its change happens slowly and organically, the direction of its change is usually highly predictable. The nature of change in a designed mechanical system is far less predictable and depends on the will of the designer. All right, to the extent that you do occasionally find something surprising in the common law, that will almost always be the result of one of three factors. Let me just quickly list the three things that might cause you to find something surprising in the common law. One, the common law has not yet caught up with a shift in the customs, traditions, and reasonable expectation of the community. It's a little bit out of date, but we can then predict the direction in which it will change when the next difficult case comes up. Number two, you are the problem. You are not familiar with the community whose customs, traditions, and reasonable expectations are reflected in the common law, or the sub-community. It may be that there's, for example, a building dispute around a contract, and there are customs, traditions, and reasonable expectations in that industry that don't apply outside the industry. You know, professional lawyers may not be aware of what those industry customs are, but the courts can be made aware of that as the trial proceeds, and can develop out of that rules adapted to that industry, either the rules themselves or the way those rules are applied in the context of that industry. And third, we might be dealing with the result of one of those non-customary aspects of the common law, such as stare decisis, binding precedent. That's not customary. As I said before, common law is essentially customary. It's not entirely customary. It has some non-customary elements attached to it. For all these reasons, we can observe that the common law is a legal system suitable for a free people. That's not to say that everyone who lives under the common law system is free, as we know. Nor is it to say that everyone who lives under some other system, like a civil law system, is not free. Neither of those things am I saying. All I'm saying is that the civil law system is suitable for a free people. Sometimes we wear clothes that don't suit us. That's as true for people who live under the common law as who live under the civil law. This brings us back to the purpose of law and the purpose of human life. I hope that I have at least begun to make my case. So in the last 1 or 2 minutes, let me summarize. let me summarize what we've done today. We're coming home. This is a returning home. I think I can summarize my points in 6 points. This brings us back to the purpose of law and the purpose of human life. I hope that I have at least begun to make my case for that. 1, all law has the same purpose. 2, that purpose is to serve the common good, the whole infrastructure of friendship that helps us achieve our purpose as human beings. 3, our human purpose, our end, our goal, the point of our lives, our telos, is eudaimonia, our full human flourishing. 4, it is our nature to achieve our purpose of full human flourishing in friendship, in philia with others. 5, we should use our innate freedom in practical reason to live according to our nature by choosing and acting in a way that moves us closer to, not further away from, our purpose of full human flourishing. And 6, the character of the common law is such that of all legal systems, it is best equipped, not uniquely equipped, but best equipped to achieve the law's purpose of assisting us to achieve our purpose of full human flourishing. The common law already regards you, the law generally and the common law in particular, already regards you with the eye of philia, even if you have not yet learned to return that friendship. With that, I have only now to thank you for your attendance and your attention this afternoon, and also thank you for giving me something useful to do. Good luck in your future studies. CUHK LAW. And for those of you whose student days are in the past, I wish you good luck, CUHK LAW, in all your encounters with the law. Thank you and goodbye.